All right, Representative David Boyer, thank you for joining us in studio. Give us an update. David Jones for governor. Where does the campaign stand? Seems like you guys are all over the place.
That's what everyone says. You're everywhere. We're everywhere. We're working hard. We're not taking anything for granted. Going all over the state, top to bottom. Drive 3 hours to talk to 4 people. Nothing more Maine politics than that. But that's what needs to be done. And so I think we have a good shot. You know, Dave, he's not a politician, but he does have a conservative record of supporting President Trump, supporting conservative causes in Maine for decades. And I really appreciate that. He was one of the guys that helped sue during COVID when Janet Mills locked our state down. They put a lawsuit together. He put a lawsuit together for ranked choice voting. And now we're putting one on the red flag law that passed, because I think that is blatantly unconstitutional in our state constitution. So I think he's the right guy for the moment. There's lots of other great Republicans running. Our worst Republicans, you know, miles ahead of the left's picks. So, but I think Dave's the guy to get it done. And, you know, we hope to earn your vote.
One thing I wanted to ask is I've said before, we're planning on trying to organize a debate moderated by the Maine Wire. You know, we've had some success working with the Common Sense group that I think is affiliated with Ray Richardson. I don't know exactly what their structure is, but they've held some forums down at Dunegrass at Old Orchard Beach. And we've kind of piloted some, online streams and had some success doing a multimedia audience.
Good job.
Honestly, it looks better than what the TV stations do. So we're hoping to organize one for ourselves and do it up in the northern part of the state. Ideally north of Bangor. We're actually looking at Caribou.
That'd be awesome.
There's a lot of these gubernatorial candidates might discover.
Hate you, but...
Yeah, they're going to hate me, but they're going to discover where Aroostook County is. I'm just kidding. I'm sure they all know where Aroostook County is.
It's at the top.
Yeah, but we want to have a debate up there, and we've been talking kind of informally, and I've been asking the candidates, what do you think is fair to set down for, like thresholds or credential, I guess, like, the qualifications for participating in the debate, because it's pretty clear that a debate that involves candidates who don't have a realistic shot of winning is less valuable to conservatives and to Republican voters than a debate that has the serious contenders up there. But you also don't want it to be something where people have bought their way up there. That's just based on money. If you place it around polling, it's like, well, geez, how many polls are actually going to be conducted of specific to this race between now and, say, February or March? So what have you thought about that at all? What do you think would be fair for, setting up credentials?
As long as we're there, I could give a shit.
All right, well, we'll reverse engineer it then. If your name's David Jones, you're allowed on the stage.
No, it's a fair. Totally fair, especially when you're hosting question, and we're at 8, 9, 10 candidates, right? So having a 2-3 hour debate still just means people only get to talk for a couple minutes each.
Oh, and that depends on how long the moderator talks as well.
That's right. So I think depending on the date of the debate, you could use whether or not they qualified for the ballot, right?
Well, that'll definitely be one. The submission of petition
March,
signatures. Yeah, if you've got your petition signatures in, that'll be one. And then I think there'll be a fundraising threshold and a polling support. And maybe we'll do an either or type thing. Have you raised a certain amount of money, or do you have a certain number of small dollar donors from within the state of Maine? Something like that. So we want to make it like transparent and fair, and have it announced well in advance so that it doesn't look like we've reverse engineered it to exclude certain candidates just because we're gatekeeping or something like that. So I'm always interested to know input from people who are working on the campaigns and the candidates.
The one or the other kind of is probably more fair. Look, in 2010, I think Paula Page raised the least amount of money and got the most votes. So it's not everything. You need enough. Back then, I think he raised 160 or 180,000 in 2010 for governor for the primary.
I think Les Otten raised a couple million, and
Steve Abbott, Les Otten
disappeared.
Chincat, I think that was that one. Maybe not. No, money's not everything. You need enough. You need enough to get your message out so that voters get to know you. And obviously in 2010, Paula Page had enough money to introduce himself to voters. He, had that background in Waterville and as mayor, and it worked out. And I'd love to, maybe we'll break it down to see the cost per vote there in that primary. But he was very efficient. So the polling, it's tough. There hasn't really been polling, and we're still a ways out. So that's harder to do. And who does the polling? Which poll do you go with? And so the money, though, I think that's fair. I don't know what you'd set it at. Maybe at least 50 or 100 at that time. You need a staff. That's a staff right there. You need a team.
Well, for sure. And just the reality of it is that the Democratic candidate is going to be well funded. No matter who it is, they're probably looking at $5 to $10 million, especially with, the outside groups that will come in and spend money heavily.
Isn't it funny? Republicans always get blamed for like money in politics and stuff. And like every time, yeah. I don't know, every state maybe, and nationally, they outspend us 2 to 1, 3 to 1.
Yeah, maybe in Texas or Florida, there's big money, Republican politics that, buying their way. But yeah, in Maine, it seems like there's 10 different, dark money leftist groups that are 10 times better funded than the Maine Policy Institute universe that we're a part of. So I guess we're the dark.
They spend 6 months investigating your.
We're the dark money. We're the dark money, right? Yeah,
parents who are showing up at school boards.
Yeah, that was an interesting story that you're talking about. That I guess it was Central Maine is the website that they published that under. It's all one organization. Yeah, the Maine Trust for Local News. We were down in Washington, D.C. to accept the Dow Prize for Best Multimedia Journalism. When I saw the 6-month investigation into the vast right-wing conspiracy, and it should have. They should submit it. Maybe they'll win for Best Local Journalism. But I'm looking at the flow chart and trying to understand like the connections and what they mean, because I too am making some flowcharts to help with storytelling. So I'm always interested to learn from my peers. And I see a line that connects the main wire to the dinner table. And I didn't understand what that line meant, that I'd talked on the phone to Laurel Libby at some point.
Because I know on some of them, they just had a line and it said personal connection. I was like, how is this even news? Like, they're mutual friends on Facebook, so we could draw a line.
There's like 10 of us in Maine. we all kind of know each other. But the other thing is, if 6 months they spent working on that investigation and they never bothered to pick up the phone. Like, I would have told them everything that they thought was some kind of revelatory scoop. I'm pretty sure Matt Gagnon would have told them. There was nothing there that seemed to be.
They didn't call y'all once?
No, they never called.
I think they never called your side of the story.
They never called anybody in the story.
Both siding it, and they're not supposed to both side it. And wait, that's the news. Wait,
yeah. But I guess that brings us to another, topic relevant to the gubernatorial campaign is. How are you guys handling the press? Because I've talked with some of the other gubernatorial campaigns and had Lauren LePage in here, who's working a gubernatorial campaign and on former Governor Paul LePage's congressional campaign, and dealing with the press is just like a constant battle, especially the Bangor Daily News, the Maine Trust for Local News. Now they're less talented at being hacks, so they're not as difficult to deal with. But the Bangor Daily News still seems to be a perennial bother for Republican candidates when it comes to trying to get a fair shake. You literally have to bully them online in order to get a fair headline out of them.
Yeah, I mean, working in communications in this role or other roles, I've definitely had to, call a reporter and shame them into correcting a story or fixing it or getting basic facts right. That seems to be the only way they yield, is because they have an ego. We all have an ego, and they see themselves as these, arbiters of the truth and all that, crap. So okay, well, here you go. This 1 + 1 is not 3, but you wrote that. How can you? And then they'll go back. Regarding, the campaign, the gubernatorial campaigns, it's all the Republicans have a challenge because the previous administration literally paid for good coverage to the Press Herald, to the Bangor Daily News. So, we're at a disadvantage, and they might see their money drying up if they don't get another Democrat in there to pimp the Department of Education or OCP or whatever. So it is a kneecap. And some of these reporters, I've just corrected them like multiple times privately in an email, just trying to get a little goodwill. Doesn't work. No favors ever. And it's tough. And I see they wrote a story about the gubernatorial field and how they're going to work with President Trump or not work with Trump. And the Republicans are center-right people they decide to showcase is Jonathan Bush and Rick Bennett for the most part, right? That's the story was about them. And it's like, well, one's not a Republican and the other one obviously doesn't like Trump, They mentioned Bobby Charles a little bit. They couldn't reach his campaign for comment. I think it's them. I think we need to be wary of the newspapers, the media, elevating candidates that aren't really indicative of Republican values and what majority of Republicans in the state want and look for in a candidate. They have an incentive to raise the profile of weaker candidates.
Well, it's exactly what they're trying to do. I mean, specifically with Rick Bennett, I haven't seen a thing about Rick Bennett. No voter that I've interacted with over the last however many months has asked about Rick Bennett. It doesn't even appear that he's running a campaign of any kind. So for the Press Herald to reach out and try to prop him up as if he's like the third leg of, Democrat, Republican, and then Rick Bennett is clearly them trying to frame the race in a way that they think will be advantageous to whatever Democratic candidate ends up being nominated.
Get a couple Republicans to think twice about Rick and go with Rick. And
basically the reverse Elliott Cutler.
Right. And I think we're making the same gamble. Rick took a lot of bad votes on his way out. So it remains to be seen how he's going to campaign and if he's going to try to stay right in the middle or try to get a little bit from the left, a little bit from the right. I think it depends. I think his strategy depends on who the nominees are. If you have a Bobby Charles nomination and a Shenna Bella's nomination, Rick Bennett looks pretty normal. I don't, you might have different thoughts about Bobby Charles, but I don't think that guy can win the general election. His campaign doesn't seem ready for prime time, putting out a bunch of AI slop and.
Well, my opinion on the AI stuff is pretty severe. I think it should be illegal for baby boomers to use AI.
I love it too much.
Just across the board.
Dave Jones was like, no, Dave, no, we're doing it. I'll type it out. No.
If I had a nickel,
it's Miracle Whip.
If I had a nickel for every time I'd gotten an email from some baby boomer who had typed into ChatGPT, develop a strategy for conservatives to take control of Maine, and then like print PDF and mailed it to me, I'd be a lot wealthier than I am now. So I would just say like no more baby boomers using ChatGPT or Grok. Just no. With the exception maybe of David DeLorme, because he's a bona fide genius. He can use Grok if he wants, but the baby boomers, no.
It doesn't work out.
No, it doesn't work out. It's
veterans on the VFW emblem. That one really pissed me off. And then I think, his lobbying career is going to come out more. And, he lobbied for the fusion centers, the National Association for Fusion Centers as a lobbyist. And those are the kind of quasi-government, mostly governmental agencies that have been propped up after 9/11 to spy on peaceful activists on the left and the right. I'm old enough to remember when they targeted Ron Paul supporters and pro-life supporters. They put in a flyer and said, these single-issue voters or anybody with a Gadsden flag, they could be domestic terrorists. And I don't need to beat him up too much today, but I guess I'm just, talking about the Rick Bennett thing. I think his strategy is going to determine, who the parties put up as a nominee, and he'll be able to kind of slime his way which way and be kind of a reptilian about it.
Well, yes. If his campaign is more than just a vanity thing, which it could be with Rick, it could just be a vanity project. But on Bobby, I would say that one of the things that's attractive to him is or attractive about him is his tough on crime message, which is something that I think that all the Republican candidates from municipal level to the state house level should be emulating, because I think that that's a message that's going to be more powerful in a general election than like the Maine girl dad stuff, for example. Like, I think that's a ballot initiative that's going to win. It's going to be successful, but it's not like a bear baiting issue where it's going to drive conservatives out to the polls in a way that's influential down ballot. I think it's going to be something where people also vote for another reason. They're going to the polls to select a candidate, and then they're also going to vote on that referendum. But I think that crime is an issue that is just exploding, and the newspapers, one of the things that they've done as part of their attempt to, I think, deliberately frame media coverage is downplay crime. You know, the newspapers won't print mugshots anymore. The newspapers have stopped printing police blotters in a lot of cases. They downplay a lot of the crime that's occurring, and that gives, you know, if you're not aware of the burglary and the petty crime and the drug crime and the crime that emanates from the homeless encampments that are allowed to fester in all of our cities, if you're not aware of that and reporters aren't showing it to you on a daily basis, you're not going to go into the ballot, the voting booth and vote like crime is important.
If you're not aware of it, it can't be that important too at the same side, right? Like,
well, yeah, I mean, it's do you have to wait until you're robbed?
Yeah.
I mean, we've
unprovoked stabbing. All right, fine.
Like we've put out the crime in Lewiston, for example, is so bad. We put out the charts of the map plots showing all the shootings and overdoses,
Tree Streets,
and Bartlett Street in particular. It's so bad there that even Ayman Osman, the supposedly elected city councilor there, had a gun stolen from his car. Can you believe that?
Safe.
Left is nothing sacred. The Somali city councilor there is getting a gun stolen from his car, and we still don't know where that firearm is. But I think that the crime message, and in particular going after some of the Maine care fraud, is why Bobby has caught on.
No, that's big. And I'm not me, Steve, I'm not like a big fear mongering guy. I would say Maine obviously is still top 3 safest state in the country. But it doesn't feel that way necessarily. And that matters, right?
Yeah.
People have to feel safe to be safe.
And if you game the stats, you can reach whatever conclusion you want. If Jackie Sartoris in Portland decides to stop prosecuting and charging crimes, all of a sudden the number of crimes goes down, and police stop arresting for crimes that they know won't be prosecuted and won't be charged. And right now we also have in Penobscot County, we have a public defender system where the public defenders get to decide whether or not they'll take a case, and they're deliberately not taking cases where they think the individual shouldn't be prosecuted, and if they don't get a public defender, they get automatically released. So
they get to play judge.
Exactly. They get to play legislator, a judge, jury. They're determining who the laws are going to be enforced against. So we have all these backdoor ways of making our crime statistics look a lot lower than they are. But I can tell you that there's plenty of petty crime going on, because even my high school buddies have called me up and said, "Hey, we appreciate that you're doing this whole Chinese mafia thing, but can you, look into who's stealing all our power tools? Because people's, their work tools are going missing all the time, and it's mostly drug-related crime. Sure. People are drilling holes in oil tanks to steal number 2, fuel from houses. There's a lot of crime going on, and I think that people are sick of it. People want to be safe in their own communities, and that's a message that I think that any of the campaigns could use to appeal, especially to moderate, independent, suburban females that Republicans have struggled with. But that's just my 2 cents. I'm not a campaign consultant. I just think that the crime issue is big. Maybe it's because it's something that we report on so much. But speaking of crime and organized crime,
weed.
The Office of Cannabis Policy, the government, the state government, the Mills administration. It kind of actually blends 2 stories, the biased media and the Office of Cannabis Policy, because you've been the subject of multiple stories that really appear to have been planted by the Office of Cannabis Policy in the Maine Trust for Local News papers, their websites. One targeting you for receiving campaign contributions You and Senator Hickman both received campaign contributions from people in the marijuana industry. You've both
Hundreds of
long,
dollars.
hundreds of dollars. You guys
Maybe
have,
even 1,000.
you guys have all been longtime advocates prior to your legislative careers for the decriminalization or the end of prohibition on marijuana. It was a very bizarre story, but clearly there's been an attempt by OCP to smear and discredit you guys, and it's probably because of the ethics investigation into Director John Hudak. So tell me a little bit about the ethics complaint that was brought against Director Hudak, and where the status of that. What's the status of that? What was the resolution of that?
Sure. Well, you summed it up pretty well, and it's been pretty disheartening as just, freshman, now sophomore lawmaker trying to help out a small industry that's asking for help, that's drowning in taxes and over-regulations and competition from illicit operators. And, we make good cases to our colleagues, and we'll pass these bills. But then the Office of Cannabis Policy, they'll try to sink it somehow. They'll put a fiscal note on a bill that doesn't cost money, and so now it has to go to appropriations, and then they'll use their power there to make sure money doesn't get appropriated. So then this whole bill that has maybe a lot of policy that doesn't cost anything just didn't happen, is dead. And so we've seen it really bad this last session, where we're trying to make reforms, and they just refuse. They refuse to cut the excise tax. They refuse to stop the redundancy in the testing. They make you test a pre-roll after you tested the flower that you just rolled it with. All this costs money, gets passed on to the consumers, and makes it harder to compete with the people that aren't following the rules and paying taxes. So,
and they, not to interrupt, but
sure,
they also violated the law in refusing to turn over a report that was mandated to be turned over to your legislative committee.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
The Department of Administrative and Financial Services.
Huge issues that, I forgot about because there's so many. Yeah, we felt, at least I felt, and other folks, activists and industry members working that we needed to take another step out of the Veterans and Legal Affairs Committee. So I put together a complaint or whatnot to the Government Oversight Committee regarding OCP and regarding John Hudak. There was kind of three prongs to the complaint. One was the illegal Chinese triad organized crime grows that have proliferated under Janet Mills, and
I've heard about them.
Yeah. And they're rolling out the red carpet for those grows by giving them registrations and sticking it to Mainers, while seemingly just making it really easy for folks that are not from Maine to get registered and to get state legal. So that was one prong. Another prong was just the overarching culture at OCP. The investigators, a lot of them are former police, and nothing against police, but when you have people that used to bust the people for the thing that was illegal, now that's changed, the dynamics change, but it's legal, but they're still your superior, kind of. It's, you're going to have some tense situations there, and I don't know that they should be precluded from that, but I don't know that we need to hire them exclusively, because I don't.
Yeah, you can't untrain a drug dog to not sniff for a certain product.
But why?
It's a mentality.
What's that? What's the skill? They're inspectors. They want to make sure, okay, you have this many.
It should be
plans.
Regulatory compliance. It should be the same as the Department of Marine Resources going and looking at your lobster boat, or are you harvesting blueberries and potatoes the right way? That's it. That's how the laws are in the state of Maine, regardless of how you feel about cannabis. That's how it should be treated. Really should be something for the Department of Agriculture.
And not even about the people in those shoes, but the uneven enforcement. They'll say this packaging is okay, this packaging not, or let's say you can't have this on there. And it's like, well, that's for adult use. This is medical. So they'll conflate things, and people, just change their whole business model because they change their mind, and it's a really antagonistic relationship, not a good relationship.
It's just like it seems like it's transient and amorphous regulations that are enforced with huge costs to the business owner and no consideration by the regulators of those costs. The regulations just kind of change. Everyone is trying to comply, but they don't know how because the rules are unclear and they're constantly changing. And one inspector could say, yeah, that's fine. And then a day later you get a surprise inspection and no, that's a $10,000 fine. And these are huge costs on businesses that don't have massive margins. And what you were talking about with the inspectors, I agree that, ex-cops, just because they're working on their second or third pension over at OCP shouldn't be precluded from, going to their retired on duty positions as cannabis inspectors. But I happened to stumble upon a surprise inspection at Glory Gardens, a medicinal marijuana business in Norridge Walk that is no longer in business because he was debanked and his insurance company refused to insure him. And he was an engineer by trade for a major company, actually got drug tested, so he wasn't a personal user of cannabis. And his marijuana grow was one of the more sophisticated I'd ever seen. He could control the whole thing on his phone. He clearly, maybe he got nicked by the tism just a little bit and like geeked out on his marijuana grow. And it was really sophisticated, probably sunk, $750,000, $500,000. I mean, a full million into it. And I got there and wasn't allowed to see this inspection occurring, but we're standing in the driveway and I overhear this conversation between him and the inspector, and he's got his electricity bill in his hand for $3,000 or $4,000. And he's just saying, I'm getting killed here. I'm trying to run a small business, and with my electricity costs and all my compliance costs, I'm barely breaking even. Pretty soon, I'm going to start losing money just to operate this business. And the inspector said to him, and I'll never forget it, well, it's a good thing you've got a real job.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it just feels like contempt. It feels like, folks are second class citizens, lucky to be participating in society. And it's a real shame. And you have people investing millions of dollars into our state in a time where we desperately need investment in an industry that does more than potatoes, blueberries, lobsters put together, right? We're at about a $500 million industry with medical and adult use together.
I would say the white market, the green market is about a $500 million, but it's our only manufacturing growth. The Maine Department of Labor categorizes it along with beer as manufacturing. So Governor Mills and former President Joe Biden, came to Auburn to tout Maine as part of the manufacturing renaissance, but it's all the marijuana industry. And I've said this a million times, but regardless of how you feel about the morality of using marijuana, the voters of Maine decided that it should be legal. The legislature, the representatives of the people, created a system to operate businesses legally. And now we're turning around and screwing these people who are just trying to follow the rules. There's no greater instance of that than Lucas Soroy's, who is now going to be going to jail for doing, nothing compared to what the Chinese criminal cartels are doing. The comparison between the two, it's like he's being punished just because he's got a French Canadian last name and he's white. I don't think he's an angel by any stretch of the imagination, and maybe his legal defense could have been better. But the disparate enforcement of the laws you see coming from OCP is a clear problem.
It really is. And then the debanking thing you mentioned, that was because of OCP. The list of caregivers was private. And that created some issues, with like being able to show a building that you own when you have your tenant, and some minor things that could probably be figured out. But they went the whole other way and said, we need to have this list of caregivers, their name, their town, and where the grow is and where their residency is. And so that didn't fly in our committee in VLA. We knew that was problematic. So OCP, something they do there is they shop bills around different committees. Like we had one about, gun-free zones at polling places. We killed that in our committee unanimously. This time they brought it over next door to judiciary, I think, or criminal justice. So when they don't get the results they want, they'll move it around, they'll play the games. But they took that bill over to judiciary. Activists came over, I think I testified too, said, look, we're really concerned with banking, the firearms, being targeted. Please don't do this. And they said it was going to be all right. But they went forward with it. And then OCP puts on their, it goes into effect. They put a whole spreadsheet of every caregiver in the state. Silver lining is you can see how many people with Asian last names on there.
Yeah, 247 Chinese guys,
dozens upon dozens
Chinese nationals.
Maybe a few are Mainers with Asian names, but it's probably safe
to
say. Is that true?
Yeah.
Okay.
2.
So those two fellas they're Mainers, and we appreciate them. But so the silver lining is that we can see how prolific their registry of people that, and it says what, Brooklyn, Revere.
Well, that's the big thing is you can see all the out-of-staters
New York, Massachusetts.
who they don't even have to set foot in the state to obtain a marijuana license, and they're in some cases they're even using New York licenses that don't look anything like their registry identification cards. Like they're two totally different people. And I mean, I guess there's the stereotype about, white people not being able to tell Asian people apart, but it's true. It's true of the Office of Cannabis Policy, because I've seen some licenses compared to registry identification cards, and they are not the same people, but they're it seems like some of these people, if you're applying from, say Flushing, New York is your residency and you're trying to get a marijuana card or registration or a medicinal registration, you're in the express lane. Whereas some of the, lifelong Mainers that I know who are struggling to run businesses, they deal with
they're in the get fucked lane.
Yeah, they're in long
Seriously.
bureaucratic hurdles, and it's like you post on Instagram something mildly critical of OCP, and 2 days later you've got a surprise inspection. But these same people can't manage surprise inspections of the places that have been raided by sheriffs multiple times and then suddenly enter the medicinal program. I think we're at the point where it's fair to say that the Office of Cannabis Policy is in cahoots with the Chinese cartels. They are aiding and abetting the Chinese mafia at this point. And if I was running a federal investigation, I would be looking at individual employees of the Office of Cannabis Policy, not for their potential conflicts of interest with Metric. I don't really think that Hudak actually has a conflict of interest with Metric, but I would be looking at individual employees beneath John Hudak for their, are there any suspicious transactions to their accounts, any real estate deals that they're involved in, because they're not prohibited from having a little side action with some of these new caregivers. That's where I would be looking.
No, you've nailed it right there. They roll out the red carpet. Meanwhile, a husband and wife caregiver partnership that's state legal being structured that way. So they say, oh, you got to switch that up. You got to switch that up. You got to change your books. They run these guys to the ringers and then just give them a license. And, whether OCP's in bed or not, I don't know, but would it look any different, if they,
exactly. Exactly. The purpose of a system is what it does. And what does this system do? This system streamlines the regulatory process for the Chinese growers who we know are selling out of state, who John Hudak has admitted are using medicinal registrations as smoke screens to camouflage illegal behavior.
That's what he told our committee.
He's said that they're using pesticides, that they're selling out of state, that they're engaged in illegal behavior. He said all of that. He also told your committee, by the way, that he's come up with an internal process to track when they give a medicinal registration to someone who they believe is affiliated with organized crime.
Yeah.
I submitted a Freedom of Access Act request for John Hudak's list of Chinese criminals that he said he was keeping. And they said that there were no responsive records. I thought that was curious. So I reframed my Freedom of Access Act request in a different way and said, I would like the whatever record he was referring to in these comments and supplied a transcript of his comments saying that they have this system, and still got no records responsive to that. So either they're playing games with the Freedom of Access Act, not following the Freedom of Access Act, or Director Hudak wasn't being truthful with the committee when he said that there was some kind of way that they were keeping track of when, again, they give licenses to people they suspect of engaging in transnational organized crime.
I too asked for the secret list.
John Hudak's list of Chinese people.
Let's
find
maybe
it.
He didn't want to come off racist. I don't,
I mean, he's got the list. He said it. He said he's got a list. Show it to us. Show it to us, John.
So the third thing the complaint brought up was John Hudak and his connection to Metric. So Metric is the software company that the state has mandated adult use operators have to follow. They have to seed to sale tracking. They have to tag every plant. They have to pay this private company for these tags. And so John Hudak's former business partner, co-founder of a consulting shop, is now in charge of Metric. So that felt like a real conflict of interest, at least the appearance of. And we had to renegotiate that Metric contract. And they told us it'd be like 100,000, and it turned into be, I think, three or 400,000. And John was the one negotiating that. So, at that point, I feel like a recusal would have been in order, or at least some kind of disclaimer or something. He pretends he was just a consultant, but his LinkedIn says co-founder. Those are very different titles and terms.
Yeah, the Wayback Machine, the Internet Archive suggests that there's some funny business with those companies and who's working where and what their titles are. And for people who aren't as intimately familiar with the marijuana regulatory scheme, Metric is METRC. It's a inventory tracking control company. It's very popular in Oklahoma. I guess it's mandated in Oklahoma, California, other states. It has been held out as a solution for the organized crime problem. They've said that Metric, if you had Metric in Maine's medicinal program, then the Chinese growers wouldn't be able to get away with what they're doing, which is really surprising to me because Metric is mandated in Oklahoma, and we learned in congressional hearings in September that Oklahoma has a $150 billion illegal marijuana business going. So how does Metric solve your illegal marijuana problem if it's mandated in Oklahoma, but Oklahoma has a $150 billion illegal marijuana program? That doesn't add up to me. And I actually got I was speaking with a representative from Metric who was trying to convince me of the value of their inventory services. And I just asked a simple question: is this available in Cantonese? And it's not. Metric's only available in English. So how the hell are the 240
Take that, John Hudak.
How are the 245 growers who are now John Hudak has licensed in the medicinal program, and there are more individuals with historical connections to the People's Republic of China licensed in the adult use program? How are they supposed to use Metric if it's not in their language? And furthermore, aren't you setting yourself up for an ADA lawsuit by mandating an English-only program? It seems a little nativist, in my opinion.
Well, like you just said, what we know is Metric doesn't work. It's a grift. They just merged with one of their competitors, BioTrack. So now they're pretty much a monopoly in the majority of adult use legal states. And they do nothing to keep Maine safe or keep Mainers safe or help these businesses. It's a time suck. It's a treasure suck. And they don't even use it when they have these recalls. And we wanted to talk about those adult use recalls.
Another thing I was interested in, because the other argument that's been made in favor of Metric, which again, it's just a software company. It's an inventory, tracking company. You could, just a day, a high schooler could use Grok to program an inventory tracking company. You could have a competitive free market for growers to decide whether or not they wanted to use a given inventory tracking program. That could be very easily done rather than just handing a no-bid contract or a rigged RFP to one company. But in addition to the argument that Metric stops organized crime, which hasn't panned out in California, Washington State, Oregon, Oklahoma, pretty much any state where a metric is used. There's also the argument that the track and trace and mandated testing is going to protect consumers from having contaminated products. And yet we see now that there were vape cartridges that sat on the shelves in stores all throughout Maine for months that were contaminated with a very harmful pesticide, which, by the way, just so happens to be commonly found at illicit Chinese marijuana grows. How did that happen?
The system isn't all that they say it is. And their way to make it better is to just talk about how the medical program's the wild, wild west and that there's no testing. And that's just simply there's not mandated testing and there's not mandated tracking in medical, but plenty of caregivers care about what they're putting out. They test, but the regime they have for testing and tracking is so onerous that it costs thousands and thousands of dollars to these small operators, and they're on the margins. They don't get the same tax deductions everyone else gets, every other business gets. They've competition from illicit market. I mean, if our lobstermen were competing with Canadians that were fishing our waters and doing whatever they want over there, and then when Billy Bob brings his catch back to the docks, you have Maine Revenue Service telling him we need, a third of that right now before you can get off the dock. Before you sell your product, we need our tax revenue. How crazy is that they're forcing people to front the state money to operate
before
a
you've
business?
sold your product?
Before
it'd be like asking to pay your income tax before you've even gotten a paycheck. Pay your sales tax before you've even
they want it
purchased
quarterly,
a product.
But I don't do that either.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying it is there. It's
crazy.
It's the only way. It's the only instance where that the product is taxed in that manner.
And if Canadians were doing it, not following our rules, not, which some of them they're not, right, with the sizes and stuff, there's an argument there. But there'd be a revolution in our state. The governor would talk about it at least, right?
Right,
Janet Mills would mention the lobster crisis in our state. But
I mean, I've said it before in this, if 300 Chinese flagged vessels came into the Gulf of Maine and started ignoring catch limits, taking whatever they wanted, exporting it wherever they wanted, blowing off all the rules, you would have like Maine's version of the Cajun Navy out there. But Bath Iron Works would be commissioning destroyers to go out there and sink these boats.
Pirates too. Jump in with us.
We'd get Somali privateers. They wouldn't be pirates anymore. We'd be deputizing them to go out.
And reprisal. It's messed up, and they're pushing it. They're pushing it hard. That's why you see all this propaganda in the newspapers about the testing and about people like Senator Hickman and me. And at the end of the day, they want metric for medical. They want testing for medical. It's like their white well, and it's just not compelling. There's like no, where's the harm? Where are the bodies? We've been smoking pot since the beginning of time. You didn't care about these people when you were putting them in cages. Well, don't pretend like you care about them now. Let adults be adults. Our food system's crap. Our medicine's crap. There's plenty of things that are not healthy that are sanctioned and legal and even pushed by our government.
Actually, the 10-year or 13-year liquor contract that was just handed to the incumbent bidder through what I would argue is a rigged RFP. The language of the RFP says that the goal is to increase alcohol consumption. So you're actually where the state has entered into an agreement to increase the consumption of alcohol, which, depending on who's paying for the study, whether it's, the liquor industry or doctors or medical universities, is not great for you. We're paying to increase the consumption of a substance that is harmful while at the same time having this heavy-handed regulatory approach to cannabis, which, I don't think anyone's ever died from overdosing on cannabis. The L50 of it is something, I don't know, you have to eat like 50 pounds of pot to die.
The only time someone dies of pot is when a bale of it fell on them.
Yeah, right. Or they got shot by a cop for having it.
Dude, that's a great point. Being on the VLA committee, we regulate lotto, we regulate veterans issues, elections issues, cannabis, and then also alcohol. And I definitely have some questions about that contract as well. But just to see the partnership between the state and the businesses is remarkable. That they're partners, they're hand in hand. You guys are doing well, we're doing well, everyone's doing well, we're hustling. Meanwhile, when it comes to cannabis, the redheaded stepchild, the second-class citizen, and you should be lucky that we even let you participate. So it's remarkably different there, and yeah, this idea that the state is okay with more alcohol because it's more tax revenue. I guess that's the job of the state, but I don't think anyone would argue that Mainers would be more healthy if more of us drank. In fact, less people are drinking because of cannabis, because of just health, and that's an issue for the alcohol companies. But it's weird though. That's a good point that's in their contract. But when we have a liquor company, they have an issue with the pricing, the spirits issue. It's like a formula and how they price the markup and how they where goes where. So right now we're marking up low value alcohol spirits and have a less markup on the good stuff. And so it kind of stuck in my craw that we're taxing poor people, for their alcohol.
Despite
and happy to make more money off of poor people who are medicating for the most part.
Like multiple consecutive Democrat-controlled legislatures have engaged in repeat regressive taxation. It's ironic. I thought that they're supposed to be the champions of the poor people, but they're increasing tobacco taxes, cannabis taxes, the alcohol pricing structure. And the other thing that's always caught me is, I've talked with cannabis business owners who, they, the brand that they have a partnership with is like a dragon or something, but you can't use the dragon because in the regulator's mind, the dragon is an animal. And if the marijuana product has a dragon on it, then, kids are just going to start, becoming marijuana addicts. Okay, I get it. But you go into gas stations and there's a shelf about this high and it's filled with colorful looking bottles of alcohol that are like, 18% proof, with all different kinds
not locked up or anything.
Not locked up, not behind a cage, probably not going to get carded because the guy behind the counter is like from Bangladesh and doesn't even know what an ID is. It strikes me that the double standard there is, it can't be anything less than intentional. Again, the purpose of a system is what it does. And the system that we have right now,
after 7 years,
pushing alcohol consumption and greenlighting Chinese cartel drug trafficking, and then hammering anybody with a French last name or an Irish last name, or any like lifelong Mainer who's invested their own money in a business rather than some mob boss's money back in Flushing, New York.
The hypocrisy knows no bounds. Like, one, cannabis is objectively safer than alcohol. Sorry, boomers. Sorry, Republicans. Sorry, Christians. It just is. There's no toxicity. We just talked about that. It's less addictive. Ask any cop if they'd rather arrest somebody that was high on cannabis or drunk on alcohol, and you know which one they'll say. So given that the cannabis is safer than alcohol, why would we regulate it so much stronger and more restrictive? It's an alternative. It's a safer alternative. So at least it should be on the same, level. But to your point, our culture is like so consumed with alcohol, and we're so okay with it, and it's a part of our lives. There's, you toast with it, you celebrate with it. We have tractor trailers with Coors Light can on it. Like
we get the friggin'
cotton candy vodka.
Governor. We get the governor out here pretending to take shot skis at
oh my God.
University of Maine hockey games. She's like 86 years old and she's out there trying to take a shot.
Did it with a beer. I'll do it with let's do liquor. Like,
yeah, right. It's a shocking difference of the cultures, and I think we're at the federal level probably moving toward a schedule change for marijuana, because right now at the federal level it's the same schedule as fentanyl, which is just insane. I don't think even critics of marijuana aren't going to say that should be the case. And if you do get to a position which, I'm increasingly of the belief that the only way to really fight back or eradicate the Chinese cartels and the Hmong cartels and the Central American cartels that are illegally growing cannabis and inverting it into the system is to have some kind of national regulatory framework. So you need to have, congressional changes in order to accomplish that. And in that environment, Maine could be in a position where we are an export state, and Maine is like a prestige brand, like the Maine lobster, the Maine blueberry, Maine maple syrup, that kind of thing. But if you have an industry that's totally captured by bad actors and is, consumed with, illicit criminal groups, you're not going to be able to have a prestige brand. You're going to have a garbage brand. And when national legalization happens, nobody's going to be, opening businesses in Maine. They're here because of the jurisdictional the privileges or rules, the rules that allow them to grow. They're not here because they like the weather or electricity prices are cheap. They'll just go to other states. It's a slash and burn type thing. So we're setting ourselves up for failure if we don't rein in the regulatory
great point.
System we have before national legalization occurs.
And Maine does have really good cannabis that's, known across the world, really well regarded and indoors and outdoors, each, just like wine, the environment affects it. But
the terroir.
One thing that John Hudak said when he first got the job in 2022 was he wanted to prepare Maine for federal legalization, and that Maine would be a import state. And that pissed a lot of us off because, well, I'm sure, conventional wisdom, the nerds at Brookings, they'll say, well, once it's federally legal, all the tobacco states, they're going to grow year round. And that'll be really cheap weed. That'll be the steel reserve of cannabis. And, Mainers aren't going to buy Maine brand cannabis. They're going to get their cheap shit. And maybe some, there's probably, but just like with alcohol, it's pretty obvious to me that, consumers want to support Maine, want to support local. They have friends that work at this grow or this brewery, yada, yada. So and the fact that it's really good, we have really good beer, we have really good cannabis, and the idea that we can't market that and get people to come and buy it here and sell it, on the West Coast and in Colorado, it's just so freaking defeatist. And to come in and be the head of the thing and already just say, yeah, we're going to ship in all our weed that that Mainers are going to buy. It's screw you.
Who do you think, in a future scenario where there's a Republican governor, what would you propose as changes to the Office of Cannabis Policy? I know it's an issue you thought about a lot. I know people have speculated about, moving some of the inspection and regulatory functions to the Department of Agriculture, which already does hemp. What do you think needs to happen apart from, the personnel changes? Obviously, I would assume that you'd prefer someone other than John Hudak as the director. And honestly, he's probably looking at taking, $1 million a year compliance. Scott's here.
I love Scott, and I think he would do a better job than director and be more fair and reasonable, even though he not a big fan of cannabis.
Not a big fan of cannabis.
But he's a nice guy. We get along, and he's always nice, always smiling. It'd be a Republican governor, so we'd have to cut some government. I think you could probably take. There are about 50 employees. I think you could probably run it at 25, cut some inspectors. I think we need to have the hemp issue. We were going to talk about that too as well, maybe. There needs to be at least parity for the growers. If somebody wants to grow cannabis and has a bottling plant where they make cannabis drinks, there's no reason why they shouldn't be able to make hemp drinks. And right now, that's prohibited. And OCP has fought it every time. We've tried to change that twice. And they say, well, hemp looks like cannabis. And so, there could be inversion or diversion or whatever. It's there's seed to sell tracking he's forced down our throats. They need every square inch of their warehouse to be under camera. If there's a plant that they can't see, they'll tell you need another camera for that plant, for that snake plant there, not a weed plant. And so,
the hemp issue seems to me that it's but for the hemp loophole in 2018, the federal
right,
legalization
which
of
is
hemp,
now closed.
the industry wouldn't have developed the way that it did. Like, I'm wondering, if you had national legalization, would people still be interested in hemp at all?
I think a little. I think it's a symptom of prohibition, especially, saying, I was down in Texas, and those states where cannabis isn't legal, they have hemp stores and stuff. And
yeah, I was in Nashville for the Sean Ryan show. 2 seconds after our land, and I go to a head shop, and they have jars of cannabis. It was easier for me to get actual cannabis in Tennessee than it would be in Maine. Didn't have to show an ID. There wasn't any.
The town didn't opt out.
No, I don't think they had the option to opt out,
no.
honestly. And there was no. It was bizarrely easy, and I didn't consume it. I gave it to Sean because who the hell knows where it came from? It was probably from a Chinese grow in Michigan or something like that. But it seems to me that the hemp is kind of like it's almost like a tumor on an industry that's growing out because of bad regulation, rather than allowing something to develop based on a free market. If you just had a total free market when it comes to the plant itself, would people be
the hemp market
sticking
wouldn't
to
be
no people would
that it is now.
Yeah, people wouldn't be doing it.
I think there are people
so why
that,
have like artificially boosted and propped up industries? Because then you create a lobby to perpetuate those bad laws, like what you have in Florida. Florida legalization fails because the hemp lobby dumped in money to protect the hemp products that they'd created. So it just like warped politics, not based on free markets.
No, I think that's right. That's astute. I think, and then we have in Maine actually it's carried over. The governor has a bill in about hemp, and we put an age gate on it last session. Everyone kind of agreed you should probably have to be 21 to buy these cannabis-like products. But she wants to go further. She wants metric for hemp. She wants the same testing for hemp, and she wants it only to be an adult use store. So, this idea that a product that's currently available all over the state will now be whittled to like 16% of towns. That doesn't seem fair. I think there's people that go and do purchase the hemp drinks because maybe they're a doctor and a lawyer and they don't want to drink, but they still want to relax or whatever, but they don't feel comfortable going into a cannabis store. So I think there would still be a market, but I think the majority of it is a symptom of prohibition. So we'll see that the federal government closed that loophole. I was not happy and I wasn't sad, if that makes sense, because it isn't fair to the adult use guys here in Maine when people can just blow it out, bring it in, ship it in, sell it at the convenience store. It isn't fair. It isn't level. But from like a, zoomed out view, it feels like a step backwards for cannabis policy reform kind of writ large. So maybe we can change some of that at the same parallel. I'd really love to see cannabis being actually descheduled rather than rescheduled. There's concerns about pharma being involved if it's scheduled down. And at the end of the day, look, alcohol is not scheduled. Cannabis is safer than alcohol. Why schedule it? We should have some, common sense, some science in these lists. And but what I was saying is like OCP doesn't even let the people growing cannabis to participate in the hemp, and because it looks too much like it. And so again, sticking it to the guys trying to follow the rules and giving a green light to out of state, non-Mainer folks making money. The hemp loophole, I guess they got a year to kind of wind it down. Yeah,
sell the product that's still on
sell
your
it or double down on the lobby retainer.
Well, yeah, that appears to be what they're doing at the federal level, which is disappointing to see Rand Paul, who is a libertarian champion, instead of using this as a moment to push for broad decriminalization, broad end of prohibition, is instead trying to prop up this like weird hemp scheme that seems to benefit incumbent players who'd built businesses to exploit the loophole.
I see where Rand was coming from, and I that's one of the mixed feelings about it all. You got to vote your constituency first. A lot of times, and there's a lot of hemp farmers in Kentucky, so I think that's maybe just the most obvious explanation. but it was tough trying to split the difference and make that argument the way that he's doing. At the end of the day, it's been bastardized and it needs reform, and I don't think that means we should make hemp illegal either. So,
yeah, I mean, it seems fewer laws and fewer reasons to send somebody to jail would be the solution in most cases. Would you accept an appointment to be the director of the Office of Cannabis Policy?
Probably not.
No, really?
No, I mean,
170 grand.
Love the six figures, but
I'll do it for half. I'll take that job for half.
Maybe I don't know. You know, I'm a lawmaker now. You know, I like serving the folks. Maybe I don't know. You know, but
it'd be funny if they made it the getting high with cats guy.
Derek.
If they made Derek the director of the cannabis
it would definitely
office.
be full circle for me, you know, on a personal note. But, you know, there's a lot of reforms that we need to do. We need to cut you asked me what I'd do. We'd cut the excise tax. We would reform the testing regime so it's fair. Why are you testing for pesticides you know you don't use? Go to a more audit system. Senator Hickman exposed OCP for not testing dispensaries. It says in the rules they're supposed to test once a year, take a sample. They just flat out haven't done it. And so it's like, screw you. You want to force a test down our throat, make us do it. But when you have the authority to do it, you don't even do it. That could be a way to go after these illegal grows. You need pesticide applicator permit. I'm sure a lot of these guys don't have that either. They could use that. Department of Agriculture could work with them to go in there. They could secret shop them, test for pesticides. They could do a lot of things, but
seems like you could do a lot on the secret shopper side. And
that's the most fair way to do it.
If you secret shop someplace and you catch them selling contaminated pot, you suspend them for the program for a month, 2 months, whatever, you know, shut them down penalize them. Whatever. Yeah, 3 strikes, you know, and eventually they'll get the point that they need to self-police and make sure that the product is not contaminated. It would actually be a better
system than what we have now because they let us, I'm not in the industry, but they let the operators self-select the plants for testing.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Pfizer vaccine testing, where they get to submit you know, one sample for testing and then inject, you know, the rest of us with something that was never tested.
No, and there's a big incentive, whether they're, you know, just bad actors or they're like sweating bullets because payrolls due, rent's due, and they can't take another failed test for mold that isn't even harmful, that is 10 times lower than other adult use states. We're at 10,000 for mold. Mm-hmm. Other states have moved to 100,000. So, and they just, you know, people make bad decisions, but, you know, it's has a lot of us scratching our heads when we see adult use, these pesticides, they get popped for it. When we have this mandated testing, you know, what happened? It was either the lab or the operator. I want to call that guy. He texted me, Yanni, and hear his side of the story. Maybe we'll do that on the way home. But
and I've seen a text message from him, and he says that it's not a pesticide that he uses or is present in his operation, and he's not really sure how it. So
if that's true, involved, you know, his whole life's upside down because one of these 3 or 4 labs screwed up. Mix something up. I don't know if that's the case. And then you have no oversight on these labs. So I had a bill in to say, all right, the lab results need to be public. We don't need to see the name of the lab, but we need to say lab 1, lab 2, lab 3, lab 4. These 3 labs, they all test around, they pass 60 to 70%. Okay, this one passed 95%. All right, something might be going on over here. Nope, they didn't want to pass that bill. OCP was against that. I think it's against state law or some shit.
Yeah, and again, I know we're kind of into the weeds to this because I've been doing the Chinese organized crime reporting, and you've been an activist and a lawmaker on this issue. But it seems that there's a moral hazard with a monopoly of testing companies and a testing mandate, and you have an incentive as a testing company to pass product. Because if you test too rigorously and fail product, the growers, your customers are going to stop bringing the product to you because you're being too strict.
Yep.
So all of the business is going to float toward the company that's doing the least rigorous testing. And the end result of that is the worst testing company making the most money, and poorly tested product getting to the more poorly tested product getting to the market.
Mislabeled.
So like if you were to open a great business idea for somebody to open a testing company in Maine is just to pass everything, like say guarantee a 99%, guarantee a 99% testing rate. You know, wink and a nod. Yeah, we'll test it.
Whether it's passing for that or juicing up the THC numbers.
Honest Steve's COAs will give me a PDF editor. We'll mint some certificates of analysis. We don't even need to see your product.
No, that's a great point. And that's we're behind other adult use states that passed in 2016. There's 5 other states that year. It took us freaking 4 or 5 years to get up and running. So some of the problems we see in other more mature markets, we can see them coming up on the horizon here in Maine. And one of them is the testing issue in the labs. And that was a big issue in Massachusetts, and they've had to crack down and revamp. And I mean, I'm not big on it, but I'd rather get rid of mandated testing. But if we didn't get rid of it, these guys pay all this money. The state should be the one to administer it. And then that moral hazard hopefully goes away then, and it should be free because they pay so much taxes. And so we'll see what happens with that. There's no shortage of issues in the cannabis industry, whether in the legal or illegal side.
Yeah, well, no, I guess on the last thing on the cannabis subject, on a scale from Troy Jackson to Tim Walz, how retarded is this effort to put a ballot referendum up to ban the adult use cannabis program in Maine?
I get along all right with Troy, so I'll assume the Walz is the most.
Oh, Walz is dead. Yes, yeah. Walz is definitely more. Yeah, Walz is definitely more retarded than Troy. I don't. I actually like Troy too. I would love to have Troy come in and talk with us. He's at least he can take a joke, unlike some of the other candidates for governor.
I've always got along with him good enough, and I mean, we've been talking with the cannabis folks and saying the industry needs to get involved. And if you're center left, Troy Jackson's probably the best candidate for the weed industry. If you're center right, it's going to be David Jones for sure. And so get involved, show up, ask questions. Are they going to fire Troy Jackson? Will you fire John Hudak day one? He probably would, but they need to be asked. And but to your point, to your question, I
didn't mean that as a criticism of Senate President Jackson, more as a criticism of this.
Yeah, it was almost a compliment coming from you.
In a different world, Troy and I could be ice fishing buddies, yes. But as it turns out, I'm the one who discovered his mortgage fraud. Alleged. But the ballot referendum that I think the petition has been pulled. I haven't seen the language up for it. They're trying to repeal the adult use law and mandate testing for the medicinal program. It seems to me, my first gut reaction is like, did Johnny Wu write this referendum? It's
a bailout for the illegal grows.
Yeah, you're like preserving all of the illegal grows. And the other thing is, do you think that if you were to rewrite it in a way that wasn't so favorable to the transnational criminal organizations, are they suddenly going to just be like, oh, it's illegal now, I guess we'll stop? These are people who are enslaving their own countrymen, and you think that passing a ballot referendum is going to cause them to
what they're doing is
stop a multi-billion-dollar industry? Like they're engaged in human slavery, and you think that they're just going to be like, oh, if the regulations changed. It seems like it's going to be a counterproductive effort for anyone who wants this state to go in a different direction in 2026, a more conservative direction. Getting that question on the ballot would be ruinous.
No, and can we get a taxpayer bill of rights ballot initiative? The boys and girls sports. I agree that it's a culture issue. I think it's something that needs to be settled, and the legislature didn't do that. but we have the voter ID. We got this cannabis. It's like, can the center right folks present something that, you know, makes rent cheaper and makes life better in our state? It just feels like we're fighting all these different culture wars at different fronts, and to the average voter who's just kind of paying attention, why would you think Republicans are trying to make your life better or have more money in your pocket? So I think a TABOR, even a net energy billing referendum, I don't know why we haven't just done that. And call it a solar tax. I'm so tired of people calling it net. Like, we need to get our communications down pat, because we're not talking to the voters the way that we need to and the way they understand. So I think I agree with your synopsis. I think it's a stupid ass idea. They're gonna have a tough time getting them signatures in the next month or two, because they weren't around on election day. That's a great way to collect a lot of signatures that are valid. So it's going to cost a lot of money. They're doing it down in Massachusetts, so I think they're just kind of piggybacking with Maine. But I heard that Sean Moody was going to support it, or is making, you know, that a plank of his campaign to get rid of weed. And I think that is just short-sighted as well. He's always been against it, and it's always frustrated me because he's an awesome guy and nice guy.
Yeah, that's funny.
Salt of the earth guy.
I'm still not convinced that he's gonna run. I know he's been kind of floating some trial balloons. Is he filed?
He hasn't filed. It seems like he's pushing it back every week or two. And
I don't know. I haven't heard from him. Most of the candidates have called me to pick my brain about the organized crime issue, including David Jones, but I haven't heard anything from Sean about it. But that would be
he's getting ready for the blue wave.
Be disappointing if he would support an idea like that. That would be so counterproductive, because it just seems like the governor, through her intransigence on the issue, for whatever reason, not being able to talk about massive organized crime gripping rural Maine, some strange, bizarre reason she can't talk about it. They've made their bed and now they have to lay in it. And she's going to be running for Senate against Susan Collins, who has been great on the issue, regardless of how you feel about any vote that she's taken in her career on, spending or social issues or, the Iraq war, whatever. Yeah, she acknowledged the problem, and she's grilled intelligence agency heads, and she's worked behind the scenes on this. She's been very vocal about it. And there's been actual action has happened as a result of her advocacy on the issue. And that contrast between Janet Mills never even acknowledging the problem and allowing the entire thing to develop on her watch, really the only thing she's done basically is behind the scenes say, well, let's push all of the illegal Chinese growers into the medicinal program.
That's how we get
and then it won't be illegal anymore. That contrast is going to be big. It's going to I think that there's going to be money from, like Senate Republicans are going to be running commercials about it. So there's a clear narrative set up that the one side of the political spectrum is going to protect a clean, ethical, legal, growing cannabis industry in the state of Maine, and the other side is in cahoots with a dirty criminal enterprise. And if you put this ballot initiative on, you just scramble the deck, and you make any of the moderate or independent voters who might have been inclined to vote conservative or right of center for maybe the first time in their entire lives, because they've seen,
because they can't afford to live.
Exactly, because they can't afford to live, and they've also seen, if they work in the cannabis industry, they've seen 6 years of just dysfunction under total Democrat rule. You're going to turn them right back into far left voters by putting this ballot initiative.
We need every friggin' vote we can get as Republicans, especially statewide. It's so hard for us. And the idea that we're going to tell over 100,000 medical patients, granted it may or may not affect what they do, but that this should be illegal or pretty much legal or whatever. We're going to tell over 100,000 medical patients in our state, and there's probably 200,000-300,000 just adult use cannabis users. It's hard we don't track that or anything, but the sales are about the same. 80-20 rule. So I mean, we can't afford to lose any voters anywhere. It doesn't mean we need to try to be everything to everyone, but I think this is small government. I think prohibition's big government. It hasn't worked. Didn't work with alcohol. And the voters passed it over 10 years ago. So it's not a great look. It muddies the waters, like you said. That's a great point, between illegal and legal, and who's doing what and who's supporting who. And, I don't think Maine, like the key to a majority in Maine is guns and dope. And once a candidate finally embraces it, now that we have one that will embrace it, I think you'll see that majority come to life.
Guns and dope, not necessarily together, but it should be legal for cannabis users to have firearms. Not while they're using cannabis, but they should still be able to use
I don't know if I said
firearms
this in the
safely.
Last podcast, but I'll say it again. I got to update the libertarian creed. It used to be like, I support gay married couple to defend their marijuana plants with assault rifles, and
yes.
Now I as a libertarian stand with trans people defending their mushroom facility with 3D printed firearms.
Ghost guns, yes, absolutely.
Ghost guns.
3D printed RPGs, actually. 3D printed F-35s.
Downloaded tank.
Yeah, right. Okay, moving on quickly from the marijuana issues, we talked a little bit about the solar tax. It seems that the Republicans on the legislative side are struggling to find messaging that's going to work. And there's a consultant class that's like, well, we got to do a poll, and then we got to do a focus group, and then we've got to, figure out what the messages are going to be. It seems like electricity costs, the cost of living, broadly speaking, is completely the fault of the 6 years of Democrat policies explicitly designed to make electricity prices more expensive. The solar tax, which is, you're paying it through your CMP bill or your Versant bill, is making electricity more expensive so that people on the coast can enjoy solar panels, or we can put solar panels in remote plots of land that out-of-state companies own where there's no demand for that electricity. That seems like a real easy one for conservatives to campaign on. Crime, corruption. It seems like there's a lot of easy messages for conservatives.
Yeah, I don't know. We got to spend $40,000 on a poll, and it always seems, even when they do spend it, jobs in the economy, and whether they, it's the one's second, one's first, or whatever. It's cost of living, jobs in the economy, and we have a great opportunity to make that case to Maine voters, and we can't bungle it.
Especially if they nominate Hannah Pingree.
Any of them really, but yeah,
that's true. But Hannah especially is the architect of the Mills energy regime, which has resulted in us having the third or fourth highest electricity prices when we have abundant hydroelectric. We have so many opportunities to have cheap, even renewable energy, and we don't. Instead, we're suffering under a huge cost. And you talk about jobs in the economy. Well, it goes right to electricity. Every manufacturing business, whether it's the marijuana, the beer makers, JSI up in Milo manufacturing grocery store fixtures, like everybody's paying huge electricity bills.
Yep.
And that, like, all the money you spend on electricity bills going to foreign companies, whether it's New Brunswick Natural Gas, Seabrook Nuclear, the transmission utilities, that's money that you can't spend expanding your operations, starting new subsidiaries, hiring new employees. And anybody who's looking to operate like an AI data center, you're not going to look at Maine. Maine could have climate advantages in terms of cooling an AI center. Good point. Because of the winter, but because energy's so expensive, we're going to be at the bottom of every spreadsheet from anybody who thinks about opening a data center anywhere. We're going to be right at the bottom of the spreadsheet because they've decided to make electricity prices more expensive because they think they can change the weather.
There's a theme going on in our conversation today, and it's how Mainers in Maine is getting completely screwed by out-of-state interests.
Yeah, it really is.
Like we have opened the door for out-of-state corporations, transnational corporations,
criminal organizations,
whether we're talking about CMP, we're talking about cannabis, we're talking about the solar developers that are out of state that are making the money. We need to be Maine first. And that hasn't happened in a long time. And we have a lot of great things in our state and people, but we are completely just selling out. There's people getting rich at everyone else's expense, and it's made our state completely unlivable.
We just don't have an immune system as a state to repel this kind of thing.
They're giving us
I don't know what
policies,
it is.
and we still have Maine salaries. Right? Like, it'd be one thing if
it's a good way to put it.
I was making what they make in Hollywood or whatever, but like, no, we can't afford it. It doesn't work. You got Minnesota, you have California, you got Maine. They're doing all these test cases. It feels existential for our state.
I was just going to ask, I mean, do you think 2026 is the event horizon? Because like I talk, members of my own family, lots of people, everybody's thinking about moving. Everybody's thinking about leaving the state.
Yeah.
It's too expensive. Bangor is just elected a killer and a communist, and it's already in a downward spiral. Even like hard left liberals are now acknowledging that Portland has a problem. The cities are not doing well, and the natural advantages you get in terms of the libertarian culture and the natural beauty are increasingly not worth the cost that you pay to live here, whether it's housing, taxes, energy, whatever. It does seem like 2026 is going to be a make or break year for a lot of people in the state of Maine. I might be running the main wire from El Salvador or something. I don't know.
Well,
I have to look at the extradition treaties.
And you'll be in the gulag, so you have personal stake in making sure
David
Jones gets elected.
That's true. If Shanna gets elected, I'm going to be seeking asylum in New Hampshire. I'll be calling Eric Brakey. Please.
He'd be happy to have you.
Do you have space in your attic? I'll write my diary.
It is the most important election of our time.
I know everybody says that, but like,
it really feels like that. We're on the campaign trail. We're Franklin Republicans. A guy bought his house when he was 50, paid his house off when he was 50 rather. Had it for a while. I think got a divorce, got a little sick. He's now 65, 67. He's on fixed income. He doesn't have any money at the end of the 3 weeks. Last year, he took a loan out to pay his property taxes. He doesn't want to do it this year. Bad shit starts to really happen when people are put in these positions, and it's whether it's these people losing their houses, their generational houses, which is just wrong. Whether it's business owners, cannabis business owners, other business owners that are doing everything they can to fight for their business while just getting death by 1,000 cuts from our state government, whether it's the energy costs, paid family leave. I mean, you can't even have a baby in this state, right? Like our rural hospitals are closing. Everything is collapsing. It's not hyperbole. And we have the oldest state in the nation, right? And we have, rural healthcare issues. It's coming to a head, and we need to completely turn around the state government 180.
Yeah, I know someone, very well who's getting ready to go through the having a baby experience, and that person has calculated the math, and it would actually be cheaper for one of the people in the marriage to quit their job so that they could qualify for Medicaid for a year, have a totally free pregnancy covered by the taxpayers, and then go back to work after maternity leave than it would be to continue to keep a job. I mean, that's how expensive it is just for working productive people to have children in this state. It's crazy. And if you were to reduce the amount of money we're spending on things like, welfare and Medicaid for non-citizens, absurd green energy subsidies, crony capitalism, and that kind of thing, you really could make having babies free in the state of Maine for everybody. You could subsidize, you could just make pregnancy free across the board and say no income tax for new moms for 5 years. Why not?
Definitely a better use of taxpayer dollars.
Absolutely. When your state is 46% off of the replacement rate in terms of the birth rate, you're a dying state, the oldest state not replacing itself, and the Democrats' only solution is to import like the entire continent of Africa and Asia over here, and suddenly that's going to solve our problems. You've got to come up with some more creative policies, and I wish that more Republicans would look at the natalist policies to encourage family formation. Just make it cheaper to have babies. Make it cheaper to build housing. Make it cheaper to have babies. Those two things, more houses and more babies, seems like it would be good for the state of Maine.
Again,
and it would pull us back from this event horizon.
Again, existential issues. What's more existential than
right?
Running out of babies and having.
There's a reason Elon talks about this all the time.
Children of men, moment where.
Yeah. God.
Because the PFAS,
right? It's a fantastic movie, by the way. If people haven't watched Children of Men, that's a fantastic movie, and people should watch it. But I know you've got to run. If people want to find out more, first and foremost, about your state representative, you're running for re-election, right?
I'm running for my third term.
You're running. Okay, where can they go to find out more about your personal political career and work?
Go to BoyerForHouse.com. Got some stuff on there. Check out the Facebook page, Representative David Boyer. People know where to find me, and it's been really cool and an honor serving. And I never saw myself doing it. Just being a scrappy activist, 9/11 truther, 15 years ago, and both those things are still true. But
did you watch Tucker's documentary?
Tucker,
Did you watch that?
Some of it, and then the lady he had on the
Building
other day,
7, man. What the hell? What
Speed of Gravity at 5 o'clock today. It just doesn't make sense. And it's been cool serving and passing bills in divided government, restoring gun rights for cannabis users, or your help. We had the no big contract database now has to be public, and
that was a major victory. I know we've talked about it before. It's obscure, but it's
huge.
So important for transparency. It's like hard to explain to people how sneaky and evil this system was to hide the way they were spending money through no bid contracts, but it's going to be very important. And just the deterrent effect that it's going to create when people go to try to spend money through no bid contracts, I think will be significant. Just knowing that archive is going to be public is going to stop a lot of bad behavior.
I think we said
and
January 1 on that, so it should be coming up. We'll see.
We'll see if they follow it. I mean, that's the other thing is
you can pass all the laws you want, but
the deputy finance commissioner just decides not to give you guys a report. The OCP decides not to do the secret shopper testing of dispensaries that they're supposed to do. You're reaching like failed state levels when the laws just aren't enforced. And even on a smaller level, like Ayman Osman in Lewiston, who doesn't live in the district that he was just voted to serve in the city council of. He doesn't live in Ward 5, but there seems to be no mechanism to just enforce clear laws that are being violated. We've lost the will or the the passion, the pathos to enforce laws. Those are not good signs for a healthy, self-governing society.
You go on planes in pajamas. That's what you're going to have.
That should have been a sign. That should have been a sign. And David Jones for governor. Where can people go if they want to find out more about David Jones and your work on his campaign?
Sure. David Jones running for governor. You can go to jones2026.com. We have a robust issues page that identifies bills that we would have signed or vetoed, and I think we have the most robust page of all the candidates. So
was this written by ChatGPT?
It was written by me with ChatGPT. They proofed it maybe, but I never go first blush with the ChatGPT. I got to use
You be careful.
I don't want a Kim K brain.
Yeah, it'll lie to you. I had ChatGPT actually invented a suicide note that I was looking for.
Oh my God!
Yeah,
it's scary.
Awful. Yeah, it's scary.
Everyone needs to watch The Matrix again and just chill out for.
I was just on the ride here. I was listening to Glenn Beck, and he was talking about how he's created an AI that he fed all of the writings of George Washington to, and he's calling it George AI or something like that. And he's at Mar-a-Lago doing a conversation with George Washington, and it's like, I don't know.
Boomers, man.
It kind of feels like you're peering into the depths of hell, man. I don't know if you really want to pretend like that's a conversation with George Washington. He might say some things.
Ask him about his wooden teeth.
Yeah, right. Exactly. He might not be the happiest guy, but David Boyer, thank you very much for joining us here on the Robinson Report.